This is the Roots and All Podcast, presented by Sarah Wilson.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the very first mini-sode of the Roots and All podcast. The Roots and All podcast is now going to be released regularly every 3 weeks, and in between I'm going to be releasing mini-sodes. So every Tuesday you will have at least some content available to you. Today I just wanted to have a little bit of a word about watering, because according to the Met Office here in the UK, we're experiencing our hottest summer since 1976 and our driest summer in modern records, which began in 1961. So I think probably we're all experiencing the effects of the heat in one way or another. And the question that I'm answering today is, should you be watering your plants? And the answer is very much yes, if you've been planting them recently. So you can't really even get away with leaving them for a day. If you've just put them in the ground, you need to be watering them when you put them in, and then you need to be watering them every single day thereafter if it's not raining. They really will flag otherwise. And established planting should be okay if you put the plant in the right place in the first place. So if you have planted something that loves moisture, such as a hosta, and you've put it in a dry, sunny spot, or it's in a dry, shady spot even, you will need to supplement the water. So that is a really good reason for planting the right plant in the right place to start with. Then you're not giving yourself a rod for your own back further down the line. Grass is a problem at the moment. People's lawns look really bad, and the worst lawns are those that have been shorn to within an inch of their lives before this drought happened, and they are really not coping. So in this weather, if it's hot and dry, or if it looks like being hot and dry, don't cut your grass as short as you would normally, because it's just going to go brown and horrible. If you've laid new turf, the only way that you're going to get it to survive is if you are religiously watering it. I would say probably if you're watering a plant, what I do in my garden is I actually water my newly planted border by hand, and I count 10 seconds for every plant that I water that's in the border. If I was going to put a sprinkler on a new lawn, I would probably leave the sprinkler in one spot for about 30 minutes. And you need to pay particular attention, even with established lawns, to edges. So where the lawn meets the hard landscaping, such as steps or your terrace, that is going to dry out even worse than the bits in the middle. So be careful of that. I would say that using a sprinkler on your plants is fine. It's less time consuming, but it is actually slightly more wasteful of water. So if you can, I would water things by hand directly. And you might notice on some of your plants that they're getting powdery mildew, which is basically due to a lack of water, which runs contrary to the name. You would expect that it was something associated with wet conditions, but it's not. Particularly, you will notice this on things like Nautias and on peas and sweet peas. So if your plants are getting a white kind of powdery, horrible crud on the leaves, that is due to underwatering. Things like Nautias are renowned for it. If it looks really horrific, just cut it back and see if it's better next year. And also, if you've got containers in your garden, you need to be watering those every single day without fail, especially if they're established containers and the plants in there are quite big, because they will use a lot more water than something that's not as densely planted or doesn't have as many roots. And especially if you're growing in terracotta containers, they will really dry out quickly because the moisture can actually leach through the side walls of the container. So they're even more prone to drying out than other containers. And just as a kind of another word of warning, really, I thought I planted a yew hedge in March in my own garden, which I thought would be fairly well established by the time this hot weather hit. And actually, I looked out one day and it was really flagging. So even things that you think might have got their roots down when you planted them in the spring. If it's in the first year of them being in your garden, you really, really need to pay attention to the water, because you could easily lose them, which I did. To completely took my eye off the ball and nearly lost one plant. And the last thing I would say about watering is that actually, although I'm saying water, 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 it really is the most important thing at this time of the year. There is one instance that I came across this week where if you do water very, very well, it could actually have a detrimental effect, and that is on tomatoes. So I actually pinched a tomato off somebody's plant, and it didn't quite have that concentration of tomatoey flavour, and I think it might have been because they are so good at watering, and it's actually detracted slightly from the taste. So that is the only thing that I would say in that instance. Maybe be a little bit less kind to your plants. So moving on to thinking about watering your indoor plants in this weather, it's likely that your indoor plants are needing more watering, which is just common sense. And it also sounds like common sense, but if your plant is in a lot of light, especially direct sunlight, it will dry out more, and just moving it a foot or so into the shade will make a big difference to the watering needs. If you're going away on holiday, it's probably an idea to group your plants together, as this raises the humidity around them, and it means they'll be drawing less water up through their roots because they'll be losing less through their leaves. So the watering requirements will be reduced. And if you can't get someone in to water your plants, then sometimes it's not a bad idea to just group them in the bath. And I say this for two reasons, really. One is that your bathroom is probably relatively shady. I'm guessing you've not got massive transparent windows on your bathroom. And also you can sit them in the bath and on top of a towel that's just slightly damp. And then rather than them sitting in water, which can be fatal for the plants because the roots don't appreciate this, you're sitting them on something they can wick moisture up through, but not necessarily sit directly in it. And it's okay to move them out of their normal positions just for a short while. Probably the only things that I wouldn't do this with are cacti and succulents, or anything that's drought tolerant, because they probably will survive unless you're going away for maybe 3 weeks. They're probably going to be absolutely fine without watering in that time. And at this time of the year, I also put a lot of my indoor stuff outside, because it's just, I find it's healthier for them in general. They're less trouble. Particularly my money plant, for example, was covered in mealybugs, so I just chucked it in the garden and now they've disappeared. I'm not entirely sure where they go when they go outside. I'm guessing something eats them. If anybody knows, do let me know. But the only thing that you need to be aware of in this weather, and particularly in the sunshine, is that the leaves can get burnt really easily. So it is a bit of a struggle finding a shady enough place to put your outdoor plants. And even cacti, I'm finding, are burning in this heat. So just beware. And the other thing you need to be aware of, which is a little bit of an aside, is slugs. Don't leave your plants where slugs can get them. If your plants are water stressed, or generally stressed in any way, but you'll notice it when they're lacking water or when they're in an environment that's too hot, they may well turn pink or red. You'll notice this a lot with succulents, especially things like aloe vera, and that's just basically a sign of stress. So that will indicate to you need to either get them out of the heat or give them a bit more water. The other thing to do is, if you're putting them outside, probably take them out of their ornamental containers, which are likely to not have any drainage, because it is so easy to put your plant outside, and even in a couple of days, if it rains unexpectedly or you continue to water and don't realise that the plant's sitting in water, it will finish it off very quickly. I do normally recommend taking your plants out of their ornamental pots to water them, because sitting in water is a cardinal sin for them. But if time is short and you don't have time to take them out of their pots, water them properly, allow them to drain and then put them back into their pots, this is the time of the year when you will probably get away with running around with a watering can and giving them a little bit of a drink, a little bit of a sip in between normal waterings, because they might just need it. And if you're pushed for time, it's better to just do that rather than not water them at all. I am amazed to say that hundreds of you have already downloaded the podcast since I launched last month, which is just incredible. And I can't believe anybody wants to listen to me. So firstly, a very big thank you for downloading it. And I hope you're finding it useful. But the only way I'll know for sure if you are finding it useful, and also find out what you want to hear covered and what I can do better to help you out with your own growing adventures, is if you get in touch. So please email if you have any feedback or suggestions, or even if you just want to say hello. It's just nice to know that I'm not talking into a microphone. It's just disappearing off and nobody's actually out there. So please email. The email is now active, and it is podcast@rootsandall.co.uk. So do get in touch. And of you hundreds of lovely people that have listened, only 9 of you have left me a rating on iTunes. And it would be really helpful if you could do that. It just means that I get slightly bumped up the ratings on iTunes, and people can find the podcast more easily and benefit from the information that me and my lovely guests provide. And similarly, if you'd like to follow me on Twitter and like or retweet my posts, my Twitter handle is @rootsandall. And again, this will ensure that I can get information out to people. I've been working with plants for about 11 years now, and it's a cliche, but it's true to say that every day for me is a lesson in plants. And I don't know everything there is to know about growing things, and nobody does. But I'm hoping to speak to the best guests I can get to cover particular topics, and I need them to believe that I'm doing a good job, and that appearing on the podcast is worth their time. And part of the proof of that to them comes in the form of feedback from you. So it would be so good if you could just give me feedback kind of as and when you can. I'm also aiming to be independent of external influences and provide you with honest and impartial information. I don't want to be tied to somebody else's agenda because I have to take their money. That is not what I want, and that's not how I get honest information out to you. So if you feel like chucking me a little bit of money on Patreon too, any and everything helps me out, even if it's a one-off donation of £1. But if money is tight, which it is for lots of us these days, then please just spread the word if you can. Send the link of the podcast to someone that you think might like it. Have a pootle around on my website. Rate the podcast. It all helps. So thank you so much again for listening, and I will catch up with you soon.
For more information, visit the Roots and All website at rootsandall.co.uk. To download more episodes, visit iTunes, your favourite podcast provider, or get them direct from our website.